From 1996 to 2005, the city of Hohhot, Inner Mongolia, China, was gripped by terror as a series of mysterious murders unfolded, spreading fear and panic among its residents. This period marked a horrifying crime spree involving 11 women. Most of the victims were assaulted before being murdered. The killer acted with extreme brutality, using various methods, including strangulation, drowning, or stabbing with sharp weapons, causing severe injuries. All these heinous crimes were committed by a single individual, known as the Smiling Killer, Zhao Jihong. Even more shocking, the police hastily convicted an innocent man to appease public outcry. It was not until 18 years later that his name was cleared, but he never had the chance to reclaim his life. You are watching a true story. Let's uncover the dark secrets and thrilling details you have never heard before. Don't forget to like and subscribe to join us in today's story. Zhao Jihong was born on September 5, 1972, into a poor farming family in a remote village in Inner Mongolia, China. The area where he grew up had harsh living conditions, scarce resources, a difficult livelihood, and a sparse population. Zhao Jihong's family had many children, and his parents were too busy making a living to pay much attention to their kids. Not only did he lack material wealth, but he also grew up in a violent household. His father was rough-tempered, quick to anger, and frequently took his frustrations out on his wife and children. Villagers did not have a strong impression of Zhao Jihong, only remembering him as a quiet, distant child who avoided others. Meanwhile, the village children feared and avoided him due to his strange and unpredictable behavior. From a young age, Zhao Jihong exhibited signs of psychological instability. He enjoyed playing with small animals, but instead of caring for them, he tortured them mercilessly. He was once caught using a fishing line to kill animals and then hanging their bodies from trees. This behavior is considered a typical sign of conduct disorder and latent violent tendencies. During his school years, Zhao Jihong's academic performance was mediocre and unremarkable. However, due to poor grades and an eccentric personality, he was often isolated and mocked by classmates. Classmates described him as an odd, quiet person who often sat alone during breaks. He also had occasional outbursts of anger, sometimes becoming aggressive and losing control. Zhao Jihong's unusual behavior did not go unnoticed by teachers. They often complained about his lack of socialization, tendency to withdraw, and occasional negative remarks about life. However, no one truly cared to investigate the underlying causes, leading to a lack of intervention or support. A significant incident occurred when Zhao Jihong was just 10 years old. He was caught trying to steal his teacher's wallet. A classmate quickly reported it. However, when the teacher arrived, Zhao Jihong immediately pretended to be obedient and remorseful to avoid punishment. Without concrete evidence of theft, the teacher could only issue a warning. At the age of 16, Zhao Jihong dropped out of school completely, with no career prospects, and began roaming aimlessly. He worked odd jobs but never held a position for long. Partly due to petty theft and partly due to his temper and difficulty socializing, he frequently clashed with colleagues and was repeatedly fired. Not only did he struggle with work, but his life was also unstable, with no fixed residence. He drifted from place to place, surviving on short-term manual labor. However, instead of trying to stabilize his life, he became increasingly isolated from society, sinking deeper into a negative lifestyle. In 1995, Zhao Jihong was arrested for theft and served a short prison sentence. However, his time in prison did not make him repent. On the contrary, it made him even more reckless and dangerous. He frequently caused conflicts, displayed a defiant attitude towards fellow inmates and prison guards, revealing his increasingly violent nature. After being released from prison, Zhao Jihong continued his aimless wandering, with no goals, no permanent residence, and completely lost direction in life. He harbored deep hatred towards society, especially women. In Zhao Jihong's eyes, they were the ones who despised, avoided, and always rejected him. Rumors spread that in the past, Zhao Jihong had been brutally rejected by a woman, leaving him humiliated and fueling a deep resentment. From then on, he developed the idea of controlling and dominating women through violence as a way to assert himself. By 1996, his hatred had completely consumed his rationality. This was also the year Zhao Jihong committed his first murder. That year, Zhao Jihong was only 24 years old. On September 5, 1996, Zhao Jihong broke into a public restroom at a textile factory in Hohhot. There, he encountered a female worker named Wang who was on the night shift. Driven by his twisted thoughts, Zhao Jihong pulled out a knife and brutally attacked her. After the victim collapsed, he did not stop. Instead, he proceeded to assault her lifeless body before fleeing the scene. The murder sent shockwaves through the community, putting immense pressure on the local authorities to find the culprit quickly. To close the case quickly, just 2 days later, the police arrested an 18-year-old named Hu Jiltu, a young worker who lived near the scene. Although there was no direct evidence or clear motive, the police used harsh interrogation tactics to force him to confess simply because he had been near the area that night. Just over a month later, on October 13, 1996, Hu Jiltu was put on trial. On November 20, 1996, Hu Jiltu was sentenced to death and immediately executed by firing squad. The case was declared solved. The investigators were praised by their superiors, while the real murderer remained free. In reality, the real culprit was Zhao Jihong. After killing the female worker, he continued his life as usual, never suspected or investigated. At 7 p.m. on May 19, 1996, as night fell, a small inn in Hohhot, Inner Mongolia, was eerily silent. The innkeeper, a middle-aged woman, was tidying up when suddenly, the door burst open. Zhao Jihong appeared, holding a knife, his eyes cold and menacing. He rushed inside, threatening the woman with the knife and demanding money. Panic was evident on her face. She did not dare resist. However, when Zhao became momentarily distracted, she tried to fight back and screamed for help. This caused Zhao to lose control. He swung the knife at her, inflicting severe wounds on her shoulder and chest. She collapsed to the floor as a pool of blood spread across the surface. After the attack, he rummaged through her belongings, stole some cash, and quickly fled the scene. The victim survived but sustained severe injuries and had to be hospitalized. Due to a lack of clear evidence, the case was classified as an unresolved robbery. One evening in August 1996, Zhao Jihong wandered through the deserted streets of Hohhot, Inner Mongolia, looking for a target. As he passed through a secluded area, he spotted a young couple on a date in the darkness. The girl, surnamed Song, was beautiful and youthful. Zhao Jihong silently followed them from a distance, observing every move she made. When her boyfriend left, leaving her alone, he immediately approached. He blocked her path, his voice cold and calculating. "I saw everything you and your boyfriend just did. If you don't want me to tell everyone, you'd better do as I say." Terrified, Song tried to escape, but Zhao quickly grabbed her arm and dragged her into a hidden corner. He used force, continuously threatening and overpowering the victim. Cornered, she desperately cried and begged, but all her efforts were in vain. After satisfying his vile desires, he coldly abandoned her in utter terror, then disappeared into the darkness as if he had never existed. Too frightened and ashamed, she did not dare report the incident to the police, allowing the case to fade into silence. In the winter of 1996, as the cold enveloped the city of Hohhot, Inner Mongolia, Zhao Jihong set his sights on a small barbershop hidden deep within a deserted alley. Pretending to be a late customer, he politely knocked on the door, asking to come in for a haircut. As soon as the female shop owner turned her back to grab her tools, Zhao Jihong suddenly lunged at her from behind, covering her mouth, grabbing her wrists tightly, and forcing her onto the floor, ignoring her desperate struggles. The victim struggled, trying to fight back, but Zhao was already experienced in subduing women. After committing his brutal act, Zhao Jihong did not stop. In that moment, a cold thought flashed through his mind. If he let the victim live, she would report him. That meant he would be caught, imprisoned, and locked behind bars. Without hesitation, Zhao grabbed the victim's neck with his hands, but she kept struggling desperately. Seeing this, he grabbed a pair of scissors from the table and mercilessly stabbed her in the chest and neck until her body stopped moving. After killing the shop owner, Zhao calmly cleaned the crime scene, took some money from the drawer, and fled. No one noticed anything unusual until the next morning, when a customer arrived and found the shop's door wide open. Inside, a horrifying scene awaited. Based on the faint traces left at the scene, the police found no witnesses or surveillance footage. The clues were too weak, causing the investigation to quickly reach a dead end. After this crime, Zhao Zhihong disappeared for 2 years without committing another offense. After 2 years in hiding, by September 1998, Zhao Zhihong committed another shocking crime. This time, his targets were not only solitary women, but also children, exploiting their innocence to carry out his cruel acts. On a lightly rainy evening, in a quiet residential area of Hohhot, Inner Mongolia, Zhao Zhihong spotted a young mother walking home with her 5-year-old son. Seeing an opportunity, he silently followed them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the woman unlocked the door and stepped inside, Zhao suddenly lunged from behind, forcefully pushing the door shut and locking it. Before the victim could react, he quickly restrained the child with a sharp object, sending the mother into sheer panic. Holding the child tightly, his cold voice echoed in the cramped room. "If you don't do as I say, your son will suffer immediately." The young mother collapsed in fear, tears streaming down her face as she begged for mercy, but Zhao remained emotionless, unmoved by her pleas. He dragged her into the bedroom, forcing her to comply. Driven by the fear of losing her child, she had no choice but to obey his demands. After committing his crime, Zhao did not kill anyone. He simply smirked with satisfaction, took some money, and left quickly. The young mother, too terrified and concerned for her child's safety, chose to remain silent and did not report the crime to the police. This allowed Zhao to continue roaming free, but this was only one of the many horrifying crimes he committed. Ahead, an even more terrifying crime was about to unfold. On the morning of May 20th, 2000, as the sunlight stretched across the vast fields of Saihan District, Hohhot, Zhao Zhihong aimlessly wandered along a deserted path. On the surface, he appeared absent-minded, but deep inside, a twisted hunger was stirring within him. He had committed many crimes before, but this time he craved a new experience, something he had never tried before. As he walked past a small house, he suddenly stopped, drawn by a clear and innocent voice coming from inside. A little girl with rosy cheeks was playing alone in the yard. Her voice was high-pitched, naive, and full of life. In Zhao's twisted mind, a dangerous thought emerged. "I have never approached a child before. I must find a way." He silently hid behind a corner, carefully observing through a gap in the door. His eyes scanned the surroundings. There were no adults at home. A perfect opportunity had just presented itself. Zhao Zhihong quickly adjusted his facial expression, altering his posture to appear friendly and harmless. He walked up to the gate and knocked, speaking in a gentle tone. "I've walked too far and I'm very thirsty, little one. Could you give me a glass of water?" The little girl, unsuspecting, smiled innocently and quickly ran inside the house to pour a glass of water. She then casually opened the door and handed him the glass, completely unaware of the looming danger. The moment she handed him the water, Zhao Zhihong suddenly pushed the door forcefully, slamming it shut. Startled, the girl stepped back, her eyes filled with confusion. Before her, the man's smile twisted, transforming into a cold and sinister expression. He acted immediately, grabbing the girl, covering her mouth, and pulling her inside. She struggled in terror, but there was no time to react. The door closed, swallowing all sound into the eerie silence. After committing his heinous act, he stood up, coldly observing the trembling girl as tears streamed down her flushed cheeks. "Uncle, please let me go. I won't tell anyone." Zhao Zhihong stared at her for a long time, his eyes devoid of emotion. Then he pulled her up and silently led her outside. In front of the girl was a large water tank. Without hesitation, he held her firmly and pushed her head underwater, not letting go until the ripples faded and the surface became still. After killing his victim, Zhao Zhihong left the village without anyone knowing what had just happened. That afternoon, the girl's parents returned home, but she did not run out to greet them, as usual. A deep sense of unease crept into their hearts. They rushed inside, frantically searching everywhere. And when they looked into the water tank in the yard, they let out heartbreaking cries. The police quickly arrived after receiving the report, but found no traces of the perpetrator. Based on the details of each case and the continuous timeline of the crimes, the police noticed suspicious similarities. They began to suspect that these were not isolated incidents, but a series of interconnected crimes, and the person behind them might be the same individual. The townspeople were restless, fearing that the killer was still lurking somewhere and could strike again at any moment. For nearly 9 years, Zhao Zhihong continued his attacks and murders, yet he remained at large, evading the police. However, the crime committed on January 2, 2005 became a turning point, bringing Zhao Zhihong into the police's sights. Around 11 p.m. on the streets of Hohhot, Ms. Zhang had just finished her shift and stood at the roadside waiting for a taxi home. Less than 15 minutes later, a taxi with the license plate Meng JY2230 appeared. She waved her hand, and the car slowly pulled up in front of her. The driver was a seemingly simple man who appeared friendly and welcoming. He quickly got out, helped Miss Zhang open the car door, and even cheerfully offered her a discount. Smiling, he said, "It's freezing out here. It must be tough standing alone on the street in this cold." The driver's kindness reassured Miss Zhang. Without any suspicion, she opened the door and got into the car. At first, Miss Zhang thought she was lucky to have met such a kind driver. But as the car turned onto increasingly darker and more deserted roads, a sense of unease began to creep over her. She panicked when she realized she was being taken to an unfamiliar place. Miss Zhang's voice trembled as she spoke. "Where are you going? This isn't the way to the city center." The driver no longer looked friendly. His expression completely changed, revealing a cold and sinister aura. He glanced at her through the rearview mirror and sneered, "You'll find out soon enough." The car stopped in the middle of a deserted forest. Zhao Zhihong approached Ms. Zhang, threatening her before committing his assault. After his crime, he did not kill her immediately, but casually drove back onto the main road as if nothing had happened. Miss Zhang, now in utter despair, pleaded, "Please, let me go." Zhao Zhihong responded coldly, "Don't be afraid, you'll be free soon." At that moment, Ms. Zhang realized she was on the brink of death. As the car approached a curve, Ms. Zhang, in a desperate panic, flung the door open, leaped out, and ran as fast as she could, not daring to look back. The taxi sped away, vanishing into the night. After calming herself, Ms. Zhang immediately went to the police station to report the incident. The police quickly checked the license plate, Meng JY2230, she provided. The results surprised the police. The taxi was completely legal, and the owner was a woman named Chen Mo. However, Miss Zhang was certain that the driver was a man. At that moment, an officer happened to glance at a report received earlier that morning. A female body had been found by the roadside. The victim was identified as Chen Mo, the registered owner of the taxi, Meng JY2230. Further investigation revealed that Chen Mo had been murdered the night before. She had been tied up, assaulted, and strangled with a thin object, causing asphyxiation. Her taxi had been stolen and used by the killer. Evidence from the crime scene showed that the suspect's DNA matched multiple unsolved cases from the past. Within just 50 days, 4 consecutive murders had occurred in a town of only 20,000 people. Given the urgency of the situation, the police immediately formed a special task force and named the case the 2.25 assault and robbery case. The key to solving the case lay with the sole survivor, Ms. Zhang. Based on her memory, she described the suspect as follows. A man around 27 years old, approximately 1.67 meters tall. He had a thin face, arched eyebrows, triangular eyes, and a small mouth. His voice had a distinct Hohhot accent, making it easily recognizable. Based on the information provided by Ms. Zhang, the police created a sketch of the suspect. Shortly after, a nationwide manhunt was launched, with a 200,000 yuan reward for any information leading to his capture. After 7 months of fruitless searching, the police finally received a crucial tip. On October 8, 2005, a village chief in Xincheng district, Hohhot, happened to see the suspect's sketch on the news. After examining it closely, he felt the face was familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Without hesitation, he contacted the police with the information. The man in the sketch was named Zhao Zhihong, a former temporary worker in the area. He had previously worked at a private kindergarten in the area and had a criminal record for theft. If Zhao Zhihong had been in prison before, there would be official records, which could help confirm his identity and facilitate the investigation. They decided to reopen old unsolved cases, hoping to find connections leading them closer to identifying the culprit. As expected, when reviewing previous case files, the police were shocked to discover that dozens of past unsolved murders bore the same suspect's signature. After comparing fingerprints and DNA evidence left at previous crime scenes with Zhao Jihong's records, they found a perfect match. The police confirmed that Zhao Jihong was the serial killer responsible for the numerous murders. On October 23, 2005, the police arrested Zhao Jihong in Hohhot. On January 5, 2015, during his trial, Zhao admitted to committing over 20 crimes between 1996 and 2005, including 11 murders and 10 assaults, 2 of which involved minors. Additionally, he was responsible for multiple cases of robbery, theft, and property fraud. The most controversial revelation was that Zhao Jihong confessed to murdering the female worker surnamed Wang in 1996. However, that case had previously been attributed to He Jiltu, an 18-year-old who had been wrongly convicted and executed before the truth came to light. On July 30, 2019, Zhao was sentenced to death and immediately executed. The case closed with widespread public approval. Many believed the sentence was well-deserved for the horrors he had committed. The victims' families expressed their sorrow, but also felt some solace knowing that justice had been served. Thank you for following this story. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more terrifying and mysterious crime cases. No matter how frightening, the truth. On the night of October 12, 1984, in Dallas, Texas, Angela Samoda, a 20-year-old college student, mysteriously disappeared after a broken, puzzling midnight phone call with her boyfriend. Just a few hours later, her body was found on her bed, in a strange position and with severe injuries. Right after committing the crime, the perpetrator quickly fled the scene, leaving behind the painful mystery of the young woman's death. For 22 years, the case remained unsolved until one of the victim's friends decided to investigate on her own to bring justice for her lost friend. You are watching a true crime case filled with dark, unexpected, and breathtaking twists until the very last moment. Hit like and subscribe to help us uncover the truth and reopen the Angela Samoda case. In the early morning of October 13, 1984, a shocking incident occurred at an apartment complex near Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, involving the mysterious disappearance and suspected murder of a young female student. The victim was Angela Marie Samoda, 20 years old, a computer and electrical engineering student, affectionately called Angie by her close friends. She lived alone in an apartment just a few minutes' drive from campus. Around 1:45 a.m. on October 13, Angela left her boyfriend Ben McCall's house after a brief conversation. Before that, she had dropped her friends off safely after a gathering. After leaving Ben's place, she returned to her own apartment. At 1:52 a.m., Ben received a phone call from Angela. Her voice sounded tense and uneasy. She began with a short, urgent sentence, "Talk to me." Angela said she had just let a strange man into her home. He knocked, asking to use the phone and the restroom. During the call, she hesitantly asked, "Is there a payphone nearby?" The question was believed to be a subtle way to get the man to leave without raising suspicion. On the other end, Ben heard footsteps, a door opening, and then a long silence. Before the call ended, Angela added one more sentence, "The bathroom is at the end of the hallway." Then the call was cut. That was the last time she made contact. At 1:58 a.m., Angela promised to call back, but minutes passed in silence. Shortly after, Ben tried calling several times, only hearing the phone ring from the kitchen area of the apartment with no answer. Around 2:10 a.m., filled with worry, Ben went to her place. Angela's car was still parked in front, a sign she hadn't left home. He knocked repeatedly, but no one answered. At 2:17 a.m., Ben officially called Dallas police to report that his girlfriend might be in danger inside her apartment. About 20 minutes later, police arrived at the scene. The landlord was called to provide a spare key, avoiding the need to break the lock. The apartment appeared tidy inside. There were no signs of forced entry and nothing seemed out of place. Everything seemed completely normal. until they entered the bedroom. On the bed, Angela Samoda's body lay motionless, showing many signs that she had fought back fiercely. In her still open eyes, there seemed to be something left unsaid. Initial autopsy revealed severe injuries to the victim's chest, some of which directly affected internal organs. One vital internal organ had been displaced from its normal position. This finding led investigators to suspect the case might involve psychological elements, personal obsession, or symbolic meaning, not just a simple murder. Based on body temperature and early signs of decomposition, forensic experts estimated the time of death to be about 15 minutes after Angela's last call with Ben. Just before 2 a.m., outside the bedroom, police found traces of bodily fluids in the kitchen and bathroom areas. This indicated the perpetrator may have moved around the apartment and tried to clean up before fleeing. At the scene, a sharp object was found missing from the kitchen area. The shower curtain showed stains suspected to be blood. Additionally, some marks on the victim's body suggested possible sexual assault before or after the time of death. However, investigators said they needed to wait for complete forensic results to determine the exact cause of death and time of attack. Notably, a partial but structurally clear fingerprint was found on the bedroom light switch, considered a crucial lead to track down the suspect. Around 3 a.m. that same night, Ben McCall, Angela's boyfriend and the first person to discover her body, was brought to the Dallas Police Department for questioning. In the interrogation room, Ben recounted in detail Angela's final call, during which she mentioned a strange man asking to come in to use the phone and bathroom. However, the detail about a strange man asking to enter late at night raised suspicions among investigators. Investigators began to form theories. Either Angela was too trusting, or there was something off in Ben's account. They didn't rule out the possibility that this detail had been fabricated to mislead the investigation. Ben was quickly placed at the top of the suspect list. He was interrogated continuously for more than 8 hours. However, forensic results found no traces of Ben's blood, DNA, or fingerprints at the scene. He also fully cooperated with the investigation, voluntarily handing over his phone and showing no signs of evasion. In the interrogation room, Ben repeated the details of Angela's final call, mentioning the strange man who asked to enter the house. Although there was no evidence to charge him, police still kept Ben under suspicion. At the same time, investigators expanded the suspect list, reviewing people who had conflicts or special relationships with Angela. According to friends, teachers, and neighbors, Angela was the ideal student. Beautiful, smart, friendly, and often chosen as a student representative in charity events. A close friend described her as a triple threat: smart, attractive, and with a personality that made everyone like her. According to friends and family, Angela once dated Lance Johnson during high school. He was described as temperamental, controlling, and often excessively jealous. In one serious argument, Lance not only raised his voice but also issued threats and displayed violent behavior. The incident terrified the young woman. Angela immediately cut off all contact and moved to avoid being harassed. However, Lance showed up multiple times at her new home in a drunken state. He shouted to see her, once even banging on her door for over half an hour in the middle of the night. Another figure who drew investigators' attention was Henry, a fellow student in Angela's class. He was suspected of stalking and having an unhealthy obsession. Henry frequently sent love letters, wrote poems, and invited Angela to his room, despite being repeatedly rejected. When police searched Henry's room, they were stunned. The entire wall was covered in photos of Angela, from group shots at school to stalker-like pictures taken from afar. Alongside were dozens of handwritten letters, love poems, and recorded voice clips of her. The level of obsession chilled the investigators. However, Henry was quickly ruled out as a suspect due to a solid alibi. At the time of the murder, he was attending a group study session with many students and was recorded on library cameras. Forensic results also showed that biological samples from the scene did not match him. Henry was temporarily removed from the suspect list. The third name was Russell Buchanan, a young architect who had met Angela at a mutual friend's party. Calm and polite, he had once expressed interest in her but was turned down. Russell stated that on the night of the crime, he was one of 3 people hanging out with Angela. Around 1 a.m., he dropped her off at home, then returned to his apartment and stayed there all night. However, police were skeptical. Who could confirm he didn't leave the apartment? Was there any camera, witness, or physical trace to verify that? Police searched Russell's home, inspected clothes, shoes, phone records, and even parking log entries. Nothing appeared suspicious. DNA also didn't match samples from the scene. Although Lance, Henry, and Russell all displayed suspicious behavior, none of them could be prosecuted. They either had alibis or were not at the scene. Investigators had no choice but to shift focus, expand surveillance, send samples to independent labs, and request more advanced analysis from the forensic team. However, DNA testing technology in 1984 was not advanced enough to decode all the traces. Many biological clues were suspended due to lack of matching samples. After over a year without breakthroughs, the Angela Samota case was categorized as a cold case, like thousands of other unsolved crimes in Texas. While the victim's family lived in anguish, somewhere out there, the real killer continued to live freely, as if he had never committed a horrifying crime. Nearly 2 decades had passed since that fateful night, and the Angela Samota case, once a citywide shock, was slowly fading from memory. But then, something strange happened. Sheila Wasaki, Angela's best friend and former dorm roommate, suddenly dreamt of her. Angela said nothing. She just stood there, silently looking at Sheila with desperate eyes, as if begging, "Find the truth." That dream haunted Sheila day after day. It felt like a message, a cry for help from beyond. From that point on, Sheila embarked on a mission to seek justice for her friend. For 2 straight years, she made over 785 calls to the Dallas Police Department, pleading to reopen the case. However, all she received were cold rejections. "The case is too old. There's nothing more to investigate." Refusing to give up, Sheila turned one bedroom in her house into a personal investigation center. She pinned crime scene photos, connected clues with red strings, and studied the case like a real detective. During that time, she taught herself to read forensic reports, decode crime scene notes, and studied criminal psychology materials. After years of persistence, Sheila was officially licensed as a private investigator in the state of Tennessee. Finally, her tireless efforts were recognized. In 2006, the Dallas Police Department officially agreed to reopen the Angela Samota case. A turning point in the reinvestigation was the testing of preserved DNA samples from the crime scene. The analysis result shocked the entire investigative team. The DNA was a 100% match with a man named Donald Andrew Best Jr. Donald Andrew Best Jr. had a serious criminal record related to sexual assault and violence against women. He had been arrested in 1977 and sentenced to 25 years in prison. However, in 1984, Bess was temporarily released on parole for good behavior. Chillingly, the time Bess was released coincided exactly with Angela Samota's murder. Not long after, in 1985, Bess was arrested again for a similar case and sentenced to life in prison. Throughout his incarceration, he had never been investigated or held accountable for Angela's case. It seemed the case had been buried by time until the DNA evidence was reanalyzed. In 2008, after all evidence was verified, the Dallas police officially charged Donald Andrew Best Jr. with sexual assault and murder related to the 1984 case. In court, Donald Bess appeared in an orange prison jumpsuit, with a pale face and an emotionless gaze. Throughout the trial, he never shed a tear or showed any remorse. On the contrary, he calmly described the entire crime with a chillingly cold tone, leaving everyone in the courtroom horrified and enraged. According to testimony in the investigation, on the night of October 12, 1984, Angela Samota returned to her apartment after a night out with friends. Soon after, she heard a knock at the door. The man outside was none other than Donald Bess. He claimed his car broke down and asked to use the phone and bathroom. Angela, trusting and unsuspecting, let him in. She didn't know this was just a ploy for him to access her private space. While passing the kitchen, Bess quietly took a sharp object from the knife set. He then returned to the room and began questioning Angela about her call with her boyfriend. He wanted to know what she told Ben McCall, why she called him, and whether she mentioned Bess's presence. That was the moment the phone conversation between Angela and Ben was suddenly cut off. After a series of intimidating actions, Angela felt threatened and tried to escape, but it was too late. Bess threatened her with the weapon and forced her into the bedroom. It was in that very room that he acted with cold and brutal force. Angela resisted fiercely. Her body bore long scratch marks, nail gouges, and bruises around her neck, evidence of a desperate struggle. At the same time, Ben sensed something was wrong when he couldn't reach Angela. He rushed to her apartment, calling and knocking repeatedly. He had no idea that inside, his girlfriend was being held hostage by Bess. The sudden noise startled Bess. Fearing being caught and sent back to prison, he decided to kill Angela. After the crime, Bess quickly went to the bathroom to wash away evidence, then slipped out through the side door. After a trial with complete evidence and testimony, the jury quickly reached a final verdict. Donald Andrew Bess Jr. was sentenced to death under Texas law for committing an especially heinous murder as a repeat offender and showing no remorse. Bess was later transferred to the Allen B. Polunsky Unit in West Livingston, Texas, one of the most infamous death row facilities in the U.S. With this verdict, Sheila Wysocki's 25-year journey to seek justice officially came to an end. From an ordinary woman, Sheila taught herself investigation skills, fought persistently, and became the one to bring her best friend's murder case back into the light after nearly 3 decades. Sheila became a symbol of perseverance, honored by many organizations and media outlets for her remarkable contributions to unresolved cases. Angela Samota's family held a simple yet solemn memorial, the first time they truly felt peace after decades of sorrow. The Angela Samota case is not only proof of advances in forensic science, but also a symbol of faith and determination. Justice may come late, but it will never disappear, as long as there are those brave enough to fight for it. This video concludes here. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. On December 7, 1971, Westfield, New Jersey police received a request to check the house at 431 Hillside Avenue. Neighbors were concerned as they had not seen any members of the List family for over a month. After knocking multiple times with no response, police decided to break down the door. Immediately, they were met with a horrifying scene. 5 bodies lying neatly on the living room floor, covered with blankets, as the air was thick with the stench of decomposition. The victims were identified as follows: the lady of the house, Helen List, 46 years old, 3 children, Patricia List, 16 years old, John Jr., 15 years old, Frederick List, 13 years old, and the elderly mother, Alma List, 84 years old. Evidence at the scene showed that all 5 victims had been shot with a 9mm and .22 caliber handgun. However, police discovered an important clue on the desk in the library: a carefully typed 5-page suicide note. The letter not only confirmed the identity of the perpetrator, but also revealed the chilling motive behind the heinous crime. So what really happened inside the mansion at 431 Hillside Avenue? Like and subscribe to our channel as we uncover the dark mystery and shocking details of today's story that you've never heard before. On September 17, 1925, in Bay City, Michigan, USA, John Emil List was born into a strict Lutheran family that valued discipline and the fear of God. He was the only son of a German couple, John Frederick List and Alma List. List's father was a strict religious man who raised his son in a rigid environment based on religious principles and strict discipline. This upbringing led List to develop a reserved personality, making it difficult for him to socialize and causing him to adhere strictly to rigid values. However, he was an intelligent student, excelling particularly in mathematics and finance. In 1943, John List graduated from Bay City High School with outstanding academic performance. After high school, List enlisted in the United States Army in 1943, serving in World War II as an air defense technician. In 1944, List's father passed away, but as he was serving in the military, List was unable to attend the funeral. After the war ended in 1946, List was discharged and began pursuing higher education. He attended the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor and graduated with a bachelor's degree in business administration, later earning a master's degree in accounting. With sharp intelligence and logical thinking, List was quickly promoted to lieutenant through the Reserve Officers Training Corps ROTC program. However, when the Korean War broke out in November 1950, List was recalled to active duty in the military. During his time in the military, John List met Helen Morris. She was a widow whose first husband, a military officer, had died while serving in Korea. Helen lived near the base with her only daughter, Brenda. John and Helen quickly developed feelings for each other, and on December 1, 1951, they got married in Baltimore, Maryland. After that, the family moved to North Carolina, where John continued his work in the military. Recognizing John's exceptional accounting skills, the military reassigned him to the finance unit instead of combat. After completing his second military service in 1952, John List was officially discharged and began working as an accountant at a financial company in Detroit. Later, he was hired as an audit supervisor at a paper manufacturing company. Not long after, John and Helen welcomed 3 new members to their family: Patricia List, born in 1955, John Jr. List, born in 1956, and Frederick List, born in 1958. By 1959, John List had been promoted to senior supervisor in the accounting department. However, as John List's career flourished, his wife Helen began to fall into crisis. Helen increasingly fell into alcoholism, severely affecting her health and mental state. Moreover, she suffered from neurosyphilis, a disease contracted from her first husband. But Helen had kept this a secret and never revealed it to John before they married in 1960. Throughout 18 years of marriage, List was completely unaware of this illness, assuming that his wife's deteriorating health was due to stress. Helen became more reclusive, rarely leaving the house and avoiding socializing with neighbors. After Helen's daughter from her previous marriage, Brenda, grew up, she met her partner, got married, and moved out of the family home. Not long after, John received a job offer from Xerox and decided to move the entire family to Rochester, New York. There, he gradually climbed the ranks, eventually securing the position of Director of Accounting Services. By 1965, with ambitions of finding a better position, John accepted the role of Vice President at a bank in New Jersey. Wanting a home that matched his new status, he moved his family into Breeze Knoll, a grand 19-room Victorian mansion located at 431 Hillside Avenue, Westfield, New Jersey. Breeze Knoll was a magnificent estate, featuring a large ballroom, luxurious interiors, and a separate living area for John's mother. However, no parties were ever held there, as the family lived in seclusion, keeping their distance from neighbors. John was a proud man who firmly believed that a husband and father's responsibility was to ensure his family lived comfortably. However, in 1971, the bank where he worked suddenly shut down, leaving him unemployed and plunging him into a severe financial crisis. With no source of income, John struggled to cover household expenses, including the mansion's maintenance, cars, tuition for his children, and other essential costs. Despite this, he maintained an illusion of stability. Every morning, John followed his usual routine, waking up early, having breakfast with his family, dressing formally, and leaving home on time as if he were still employed. But in reality, he was unemployed. Instead of going to work, John spent his days wandering around, attending job interviews or reading newspapers at Westfield train station. To maintain his family's luxurious lifestyle, John started withdrawing money from his mother's savings account and transferring it to his own account to cover expenses. However, this money could only sustain him for a short time. The mounting financial pressure, combined with his distorted sense of honor and religious beliefs, pushed him toward a horrifying decision. Finally, on November 9, 1971, John List decided to murder his entire family. On November 5, 1971, just 4 days before the massacre, John List asked his family a chilling question. He inquired how they would like their bodies to be handled after their deaths. His family members were shocked by the strange question, but did not realize the severity of the situation. They assumed John was just trying to lighten the tense atmosphere with a bizarre joke, unaware that it was actually a final warning before the impending tragedy. On November 9th, just before the massacre, John left a note for the milkman requesting the cancellation of future deliveries. He said that the family would be traveling for an extended period, so they would temporarily stop receiving regular services like mail and food deliveries. By doing this, John hoped to delay the discovery of the crime, giving him enough time to leave the scene before an investigation began. Without hesitation, John stepped into the kitchen and fired a shot at his wife's face, killing her instantly. Next, John calmly went upstairs to his mother Alma's room and without hesitation executed her immediately. When his daughter Patricia and youngest son Frederick returned home from school, John coldly shot each of them in the head as soon as they walked through the door. After the mass murder, John casually sat down at the dining table, prepared himself a meal, and ate right next to the bodies as if nothing had happened. He then drove to the bank to close all of his mother's savings accounts. About 20 minutes later, he went to Westfield High School to watch his eldest son, John Jr., play football. He stood there, calmly watching the game, appearing like a normal father with no signs of guilt or tension. When the game ended, John drove his son home. As soon as they entered the house, the boy had no time to react before John suddenly opened fire. But this time, he did not stop at just one shot. Forensic evidence later revealed that John Jr. had multiple wounds due to his father missing his initial shots. This suggested that the boy had fought back before being overpowered and killed. After killing his entire family, John List methodically cleaned up the crime scene, erasing any evidence, and continued his life as if nothing had happened. He removed all the pictures of himself from the house, then turned on the radio to a religious station, as if trying to soothe his mind and create a calm, peaceful atmosphere. John placed the bodies of his wife and 3 children neatly in sleeping bags on the ballroom floor. However, his mother's body was left upstairs in the attic. He then calmly sat at his desk in the library, turned on his typewriter, and carefully wrote a document explaining his thoughts on the massacre he had just committed. After finishing, he printed a 5-page letter and placed it neatly on the desk where he had been sitting. In the letter, John stated that killing his family was to save their souls, as he feared that as they grew older, his children would lose their faith. At this moment, I know that they are all devout Christians, but I cannot be sure of that in the future as they grow up. John List was extremely careful in covering up his crime. He sent letters to his children's school and part-time workplaces, informing them that they would be visiting their grandmother in North Carolina for a few weeks. In reality, Helen's mother had canceled her visit to Westfield due to health reasons. John List later revealed that if she had actually come, she too would have been his 6th victim. Afterward, John left the mansion, leaving everything intact, making it seem as though the family had gone on vacation as planned. John List's meticulous planning ensured that the massacre was not discovered until nearly a month later, on December 7th. Neighbors began to notice that all the lights in the mansion remained on day and night, yet they saw no one from the List family. When the light bulb started burning out without being replaced, neighbors grew suspicious and decided to call the police. Less than 15 minutes later, officers arrived at the scene. They approached the house, repeatedly ringing the doorbell and knocking, but received no response. After waiting for some time, the police decided to break down the door and enter. They immediately discovered 4 bodies neatly placed in sleeping bags on the ballroom floor. Another body was found in a room in the attic. This case quickly attracted nationwide attention, becoming one of the most notorious massacres in New Jersey's history. After examining the crime scene, the police initially suspected someone with a vendetta against the List family, but no viable leads were found, since the List family had lived a very secluded life. However, when police checked the List family's household records, they noticed an unusual detail. The owner of the mansion was John Emil List, but he was not present at the crime scene. All credible photographs of him had been destroyed, making identification extremely difficult. At the same time, police discovered the 5-page letter that John List had left behind. In the letter, he confessed to all his crimes and explained why he decided to kill his wife, 3 children, and mother. Based on the evidence at the scene, police confirmed that John List was the prime suspect. Meanwhile, the family's blue 1963 Chevrolet Impala was found parked at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, but there was no evidence that John had boarded a flight. Could this have been a tactic to mislead the police? After a long investigation, police were unable to find any further leads on John List and sought assistance from the FBI. After John List disappeared at the end of 1971, police and the FBI reviewed reports from train stations, airports, and travel records from that time. They analyzed resources such as train tickets, financial transactions, and witness statements about newcomers in Denver at the time. Through an extensive and complex investigation, the FBI discovered that John List had moved from New Jersey to Michigan and then continued west to Colorado, where he started a new life under the alias Robert Peter. He had taken this name from a former college classmate, but that classmate later stated that he did not even know John List. A year after the crime, the Breeznole mansion remained abandoned until it was mysteriously burned down in August 1972, 9 months after the murders. Although the fire was officially ruled as arson, no suspect was ever identified. After the fire, a new house was built on the same site in 1974. The fire destroyed potential evidence, causing the case to remain unsolved for many years. In 1989, prosecutors in New Jersey devised a new strategy to reopen the investigation and search for new leads. They enlisted forensic artist Frank Bender to create an age-progressed bust of what John List might look like after 17 years. Using forensic aging techniques, police made a major breakthrough in the case. In May 1989, the television program America's Most Wanted, aired on Fox, covered the Westfield family massacre and broadcast the forensic bust of the suspect. Less than 2 weeks after the episode aired, on June 1st, a Denver resident reported to police that the image looked exactly like his neighbor, Robert Peter. Police immediately arrested John List. At first, John stubbornly insisted that he was Robert Peter. However, by February 1990, police revealed fingerprint evidence proving that Robert Peter's fingerprints matched John List's military records from 1943. Faced with undeniable evidence, John was forced to admit his true identity. During interrogation, he casually confessed to all his crimes. He explained that after losing his job, he saw only 2 options: either live on welfare or kill his family to send them to heaven. For John, living on welfare was unacceptable, as he believed it would bring shame to his family and go against the strict teachings of his father. However, he had committed a crime that his father surely would have never approved of. After leaving his confession letter, he wanted to escape New Jersey and start over as Robert Peter. From 1979 to 1986, he worked at a box manufacturing plant outside Denver. During this time, he actively participated in a local church and even organized transportation services for members without vehicles. At a church gathering, John List met his second wife, Dolores Miller, an employee at a military PX store. They married in 1985. In February 1988, the couple moved to Brandermill, Virginia, where List continued working as an accountant for a small company. When questioned about his motive, John claimed that his actions were meant to free his family from life's hardships and send them to heaven. However, the police posed a crucial question. If he truly believed that, why didn't he take his own life after killing his family? According to his distorted religious beliefs, committing suicide was an unforgivable sin, meaning he would not be able to join his family in heaven. On May 1, 1990, at the Union County Courthouse in New Jersey, the jury took only a few hours to reach their final verdict. John List was sentenced to life in prison without parole. After his sentencing, John List served his time at New Jersey State Prison. On March 21, 2008, John List died at the New Jersey State Prison Hospital due to pneumonia. He was 82 years old. When news of John M. List's death was announced, most Americans saw it as the inevitable and deserved fate for a man who had ruthlessly murdered his own family and evaded justice for nearly 2 decades. Thank you for following this story. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to never miss more shocking crime cases and mysteries. Remember, no matter how terrifying the truth is, it must